I am using my points of reviewing each book as my own opinion for the purpose of commentary. In addition, this is intended for educational and informational purposes, and I do not claim ownership over the original work. Thank you. We're on letter 5 of the Letters of Marsilio Ficino, titled Mercury's Similarity to Saturn. He starts his letter talking about Mercury and how he associates his friend Filippo, who he's writing to, as a mercurial friend. So his friend understands astrology as well and has a relationship with Marsilio that is philosophical, to the point where they can attribute planets to each other. And now he mentions Mercury, and then he now adds Saturn. You have the 7 principal planets, and numerology is certainly important. But it goes to this question of interpretation. You have Plato's work, and then you have Plato's interpreters. You have the astrologers. You interpret Plato through astrology. And then you have the Gnostics. You interpret Plato through mythology or through community ritual. And just to briefly talk about Mercury, the bridge between heaven and earth, in the alchemical literature, Mercury is one of the 3 of the triads. Now, forgive me if I'm using the wrong terminology, but I will put this image on the screen. Mercury on the top of a triangle. Sulfur on the bottom of the triangle. In addition, with salt on the other side of the triangle. You have mercury, sulfur, and salt. Salt associated with your body. I think salt is associated to body because salt preserves, and a philosopher is preserving his body through his intellect. A philosopher is always thinking of death and death's relationship to the body. Therefore, salt being a preserver of your body, if you have this idea of life and death, how are we going to preserve this mortal body? Sulfur, the other side of the triangle on the bottom, represents your soul or your spirit as an igniter, or to the main theme of passion. Sulfur, soul, salt, body. Now we end with Mercury, since this topic is on Mercury and Saturn. Mercury is that intermediate between the body, salt, and the soul, sulfur, in the alchemical tradition. In the pagan tradition, Mercury is associated with Hermes. Excuse me. Hermes is known as a messenger or a shepherd. He holds the staff and he has the snake. So Hermes, one of the main gods in the Roman pantheons. Very important to understand this. Now he's talking less abstractly and back to the mathematical, empirical studies of the planets. And he mentions how Mercury and Saturn are very similar into their color and how much light they project. And he's saying these principal planets like Mercury and Saturn, they are signposts to wisdom. So it's not wisdom itself. This is, astrologers get it wrong. Gnostics get it wrong. The planets aren't wisdom itself, so you shouldn't worship the planets. Not every astrologer, not every Gnostic worships the planets, but many astrologers and many Gnostics see the planets as divine. Therefore, if the planets are divine, you may and you should pay reverence to the planet. Marsilio does not take that position from what I understand. He is saying that these planets are important. They're not that important because they are the signpost of wisdom. Mercury and Saturn are the signpost of wisdom. They are not wisdom itself. Distinctions are incredibly important for philosophers. Distinctions are not important for a sophist. So a sophist would not understand this proposition. And whether this is a logical proposition that cannot be understood due to limitations in the rational faculty of that sophist, or the sophist is filled with so much desire and passion that the intellect is completely dormant or dead. Let's continue because we are almost 10 minutes in on the first page of letter 5. Here's the point that really interests me. Mercury and Saturn depart least from the sun. Staying within the sun's ecliptic path, Mercury and Saturn have a special relationship to the sun. We can learn from Mercury and Saturn. And he's saying through Mercury and Saturn you can reach Jupiter. Jupiter, I believe, is the top of the Babylonian pantheon. Possibly the Roman pantheon, I could be wrong. Jupiter, ultimate elixir, the wisdom of God. And you're using, according to Marsilio, Saturn's doctrine and law, first principles like philosophy. You need that. And you need Mercury You need the intermediary between heaven and earth, whether that is a wise elder, whether that's yourself, or you use symbols. Mercury and Saturn eventually will lead you to Jupiter. That's how he ends this letter. This is interesting. We're going to continue to letter 5, titled Defense of His Book on the Sun and Light. This letter is very poetic. He's not talking much about astrology or Plato. He's talking about light. And he's using flowery language such as run into rising mists. Now, I'm simply not smart enough to comprehend what he's trying to say. He's talking about owls and bats, night creatures. Talking about how some are being unworthy of the light. Marsilio is a physician. He, due to also his father's influence, he takes a fascination with bodies, animal bodies, human bodies. So he doesn't neglect physical matter. He is not a strict, I wouldn't say the word Platonist because it's a very hard word to define. I guess I would say, yes, for Marsilio is not a strict Platonist. He is a Platonist. That's why I like him so much. But he's not a strict Platonist in the sense that Marsilio is a Christian. He believes in the incarnation of the Logos. He believes that the divine principles and forms that Plato talks about can and does reveal itself to the flesh. It has done that before, it is doing that now, and it will continue in the future. What is it? The Logos. The Logos will continue to incarnate and reveal itself according to Marsilio's framework. I could be misinterpreting him completely, but knowing his loyalty and his writing, this is what I'm basing my conclusion off of. This last letter I would encourage you guys to read on your own. I cannot give a summary of this because it's so poetic. I need more time to think about each line. He's talking about the zodiac signs, and he's talking about Hercules and how these ideas are helping him every day in his life. And since we are about on our halfway mark, we'll put a stop on minute 30. We've had 2 short letters. We'll finish our last letter, letter 7, titled, There are often twins among the heavenly beings. There are also 2 suns. We could pause here because I've been thinking lately about identity. And the previous reading was a lot on unity and multiplicity and the one, and the Greek Orthodox Church differing in theology from the Western Latin Church due to Platonism. Well, this current title, There Are Often Twins among the heavenly beings. That to me, I think of unity, not confusion, but the fusion between two categories that are distinct from each other. Now, I'm thinking about this because I'm thinking about the difference between Platonic thought and Christian thought. Because Platonists have a different view of identity than Christians. Platonists believe unity. Christians believe triunity, Trinity. There's multiple unities within Christianity. Platonists have trouble explaining what happens to you after death, versus the Christian has a little more of speculative literature. You have Dante, different Orthodox writers, Father Seraphim Rose. Christians speculate more on the life after death because triunity. My soul will be integrated with other souls, including the one soul. That's more or less what a Christian would summarize life after death, versus the Platonists, my soul after death will unite with all souls, including the one. Universalists, all souls become one, versus multiple souls being categorically distinct, yet still united. It's the Christian mystery of the Trinity, which I am very beginner in that subject. But I find it interesting he starts this topic about twins and how there are two suns. It kind of goes counterintuitive against Platonism. So let's see what he's talking about. Now, Marsilio is referring to his friend as a true brother and unique friend. He also refers to him as Uranus. He's attributing planets to his friend. And he's saying how Mars doesn't have friends. Mars lacks a partner, as it is too proud. Mars, aggression. Think about how you respond to someone who is aggressive. Now, it does depend on the degree of aggressiveness, because Mars in of itself is not evil. War in and of itself is not evil. We're talking about just war theory. But back to passion. If your aggression is not oriented towards Plato, that aggression is oriented towards Hades, confusion, disunity, depression, all the negative, pejorative terms you can think of. That's what happens. When you are not properly purifying your passions. We're talking about philosophy, how to structure your day-to-day. And this alchemical idea of transforming elements, just like a human will transform. Maybe you have a child and your child was in kindergarten and you see your child transform as a first grader. Vocabulary is expanding, hair is growing, everything is transforming from what you can see and from what you can't see. This is the alchemical idea of purification, purifying your passions. And I think it's interesting, Marsilio mentions Mars and how it is too prideful. And when you are too prideful, you don't have friends. And he's basing this off of Mars competing with the sun. Very interesting. Now, Marsilio's talking about how the sun has a twin sun, maybe a lesser sun, maybe the dyad out of Plato's triad. He's saying this lesser sun follows people, and it is shine for the Medici, the current Lord of Florence, Piero de' Medici. Now, if anyone were to question what is Marsilio's stance on the Medici family, on the Catholic institution, he makes it clear. He believes the light of the sun is with the Medicis. That shouldn't surprise you as a Catholic priest. One would say something like that. It's a very interesting statement just due to the fact that the Catholic Church, as I said, is losing influence at this time in Florence due to the Arab conquest. So there's a rising anti-Medici spirit from the East, in addition to stirring in the West, a lot in France, through, as I said, Freemasonic communities. Freemasonic communities were simply Pythagorean cults, window dressing as Europeans. Scottish Freemason Rite, the French Freemason, the Rosicrucians can, I would argue, be thrown into that group, because the Freemason, the Rosicrucians, and the Scottish Rite were vehemently against the Catholic Church and the Medici, but the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and the Scottish Rite, they are interested in the same subject as Marsilio Ficino. Marsilio Ficino and the Freemasons are Platonists. Marsilio and the Freemasons both revere mythology, symbol. The difference lies in rationality versus ritual. This is what I'll argue. Marsilio believes in both rationality. Your intellect can bring you closer to the one through this process of philosophy. In addition, participating in rituals such as the Eucharist as a Catholic priest will also help you in this journey of improvement, improving your body, your spirit, and your mind. Marsilio is both a rationalist and a ritualist versus the Freemasons, who are simply the rationalists. Yes, there are Freemasons, and the Rosicrucians have their rituals. But in general, the foundational structure, just like how not all Catholics believe the same thing. But the Catholics do have foundational principles, just like the Freemasons. Not all Freemasons believe the same thing, but the Freemasons have foundational principles. One of those foundational principles is you do not need rituals, you only need your mind. This is based off of Plotinus, and Plotinus was obviously a Platonist. I would say a Neoplatonist because Plotinus did diverge from Plato to some degree, which we can talk about later. But for now, I'm thinking deeply about the Catholic Church, the Medici family, Hermeticism, Freemasonry, Christianity, and paganism. Paganism, Judaism, and Christianity. And if you want to make it more complicated, we can throw in Islam. But again, we are focusing on the Italian Renaissance, Europe. So we don't want to get distracted. I am 5 minutes away from ending. Let's finish letter 7. He's talking about the importance of contemplation. Interesting. He's saying the sun is the most openly visible thing of all. Many people think that philosophy and spirituality is overcomplicating life. Those that say that actually have a very good point. Philosophers certainly can complicate life. Marsilio's reminding us that you don't have to look far. The sun is more visible than you can dream. And it is more accessible than you can dream. This is very Platonic. Unlike the sophists, Plato, you can arrive to enlightenment. You can arrive to truth and beauty, versus the sophists, you cannot do that objectively. You can arrive beauty and goodness subjectively. There's no one way to find beauty and truth. A good argument that the sophists make, but just because an argument is good doesn't make it right or true. Now we're on to the deep question of what is truth. But I will finish this letter. It's very poetic at the end, talking about divine matters. And he's talking about fire. And he's basically ending this letter with poetic writing about God and immeasurable light. That's letter 7 of the letters of Marsilio Ficino. Thank you for listening.